Looks like there's more of you than there's supposed to be. Let's see, three, and two more. Orlis is 9. So.
Nick Accioni's not here. He's on a business trip. He said I can get emails.
That means there's even more.
Yeah.
What happened? Oh well. So there may not be enough things here. Hey, let's see. So you got some emails from me, right? One described the first writing assignment, and the other described some elements of the second one. True?
Yes.
You all got it. I mean, you're not. This is not totally surprise, shock, oh shucks, whatever. Okay. There may be an extra one there. Who knows? And the final ingredient for the night. I guess I should refer to these as recipes more than ingredients. So the bias is to where the people who sit by the door, see, they're assured getting stuff. They may not get over here to here. If they don't, however, we'll take care of that later. Okay, let's talk about change. How many of you have actually been through changes? I mean, other than adolescence. How many of you have jobs? Okay. Any stuff hit the fan at your job since you've been working there? No?
Yes.
Oh, I was going to say, what planet are you working on? I mean, this is a time in history we're noted for instability. It's crazy. You're going to work, you don't know whether you're going to get paid this week or not, right? It's a good bet you're not going to get a raise. Right? Anybody work here? You wouldn't get a raise. So, what are the uncertainties? And what does that do to you? I mean, does uncertainty bother you? How many of you are really cool about the vagaries of life? Hey, come say, come saw, it can rain, it could be a tornado, I'll be cool. You see some of these guys that play quarterback, they're sitting there and it's like, you could shoot at them and they just wouldn't flinch. They just a little dumb someplace up here maybe. Is that admirable? How many of you get a little flustered by some of this uncertainty? You're not comfortable with this. So when people say, "Oh yeah, I like change," you know what I say? Hell, you do. Because most people don't like change. Elizabeth Moss Cantor, who's had a very fascinating career, she started off as a sociologist and wrote a book about the sociology of organizations, and has found herself being moved from the Harvard Sociology Department to the Harvard School of Business. A good move. The business school people get paid about 4 or 5 times as much. So these days, she's the most recognizable, the most famous, the most often invited to speak person in the School of Business. She could use a little consulting with some of her costumes. I was recently on a luncheon with her, and she gave an after-lunch speech. And when you're 70 years old and you've put on a few pounds, just stop wearing knitted costumes that ride up and expose parts of your tummy to the world. Other than that, though, she's really a smart cookie, writes great books. Welcome back. She wrote a book. Her first book that really was a huge bestseller dealing with this whole issue of change was a book called The Change Masters. And this book described a bunch of major corporations and how they handled planned change. There's 2 kinds of change. Change planned for, change that hit you in the back of the head. You know, big surprise. Are most of the ones that bother you stuff you plan for? Huh. Somebody hold up a whack and you know, like a sucker punch. You know what that is? That's where you're walking along and somebody else will be just sitting all of a sudden hit you someplace and you go, ugh. Probably happens. You're girls. People don't do that among the females, right? It's just the males do stupid things like that to harm one another. Right? Girls just say mean things, right? There's that movie, Mean Girls. You ever see that? Plan change. You can plan for it, right? And the planning is interesting sometimes. Cantor talks about a company where the way they communicated symbolically to the employees was really interesting. They had all this, of course, you could tell me what state you think this happened in as I describe it. So raise your hand and say, I think it's this state. They had the top 20% of the employees invited to this event where they were going to announce their annual goals for performance. So you got all these people at this resort. They get them all into a big auditorium. And the top executives are telling them about their performance, what's expected, and giving them kind of rah-rah presentation. Some of you look like you're using rah-rah. And then they heard them all outside, and they put them into buses, and they drive them to the beach. And there on the beach, you know, it's all set up resort-like. There on the beach, they see marching toward them elephants. You ever seen an elephant marching toward? First elephant, this is like the three bears, only the three elephants. The first elephant is the smallest elephant. And it has on its back like a blanket, and the blanket has a message. It has a number, dollar figure for last year's performance for the company. So many millions. Okay? The next elephant is bigger. And it has a bigger number on the side. The third elephant is the biggest elephant, and it has the biggest number. And that, of course, is our goal for next year. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make offer for billions of dollars. And symbolically, you see this because we're going to be the biggest elephant. So what state do you think?
California.
That was a pretty obvious guess. I mean, what else do you associate with weird symbolic things like that? Outrageous things like that? But California, I mean, really, Georgia? Getting an elephant to Hilton, that's a real pain in the butt. It's an island. Florida, maybe, you know, that's a really strange place too. So, but here we are. The study of change started a long time ago. Now I know that all of you were forced at gunpoint to take a course in philosophy. Isn't that true? Did you enjoy it? The nodding heads have ceased. Did you learn anything about philosophy? Name 3 philosophers.
Like Socrates.
Who?
Socrates.
Socrates. I think
Socrates, like Greek
that's a
philosophy.
clothing you wear while you kick around. Oh, Socrates. Oh, Socrates?
Yes.
And he was from where?
Greece.
Greece. A long, long time ago in Greece. Yes, okay. So what did Socrates do? What did he say? Why is he famous? Why would we study him? See, based upon your response to this, I suggest that we use this as evidence for the elimination of the philosophy department. They're obviously producing no results. Not one of you who was forced to take these courses. Now, all of you didn't go to school here, right? Where'd you go?
I went to Millersville.
Millersville. No philosophy?
No, I took it.
Sure. What was it? What, how many? One or
Just
two?
one.
Just one. Just one.
Went to Shippensburg,
How many philosophies?
one.
One.
But the guy who taught it had like a cable access TV show where he pretended that he was on Mars. And that's what we talked about in the class.
Being
He
on
was like a
Mars.
visiting professor for the semester.
Do they ever visit anymore after that?
No, that was his last semester. And at the end of the semester,
They
we
sent him
went
back to
and we
Mars?
told him what grade you wanted.
Whoa. They used to say that the University of Miami had a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Basket weaving. And where were you?
Ursinus.
Did they do anything like that?
Yeah, we had to take something called the Common Intellectual Experience, CIE 1 and 2.
The common intellectual experience. Common is to not have an intellectual experience, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. How many philosophers did you learn about?
A good deal.
A good deal? Is that like getting a
Yeah.
bargain or
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really remember much from it though. It was freshman year.
freshman year is just a
Yeah.
haze? Yeah. Some people go to parties all the time freshman year. Some people pump iron all freshman year. Some people drop out after freshman year. Where were you?
Elon University, North Carolina.
And did they have philosophers there?
Probably. I
Oh. You didn't take it. They didn't make you take it.
No.
Yeah, so. My contention is that for most people, they have to be hogtied to do that. See? And I knew that. See, in high school I was interested in philosophy, but I used to go to the library, but I never tell anybody that that's what I was reading, because I figured this is a good way to get in trouble. It was very useful to be fast, because people who found out those things about you would chase you and harass you. So as long as you could outrun them, you were safe. You went to school, Villanova?
did.
Yeah. So they made you take two?
Well, we had to take 2 core humanities, which are basically philosophy classes, and then 2 philosophy classes.
Okay. So name 3 philosophers.
Descartes, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. And I know I could name them. I don't remember.
You don't know what they were all about.
No, they had a lot of questions. And not a lot of answers.
Oh, great. Is that right? They had questions but no answers. Isn't that a pain in the butt? My father was like that. He was always asking me questions. He couldn't give me any answers. He could figure it out. But it was useful there. What person among the philosophers you just named was famous for being like my father? You should know that. You're warm. No, it's not Descartes. What country was Descartes in? Oh, good. She didn't even take philosophy. She knows the answer. Good. Your absorption rate is good. It's like I just go hang out in the right bar, you know, the near philosophers, and they'll talk about stuff like that, and they're drunk and stupid. Where's your school?
Moravian College.
Did they have philosophy there?
They did, but I didn't take it.
You didn't take it. You were deprived. And you went to Villanova. Did you learn any philosophy?
At one point, I feel like they teach it in every class at Villanova.
In every class in Villanova?
Pretty much, they bring it up.
They bring it up. Yeah, especially me. Why is he bringing this stuff up again? Thought we were done with that. So which philosopher was the one who was a pain in the neck by asking questions?
Oh, you mean Socrates, like the Socratic method?
Exactly what I mean. See, there's just a time thing that, he comes back and you're like, bingo. Yeah, right. And you went to where?
St. Joe's.
St. Joe's. Well, it's a Jesuit school. My God, they must have lots of philosophy there, right?
A bit.
A bit.
I took 2.
2. Okay. Well, that ties you with Villanova. So, what can you tell us about Socrates?
Just that he was a thinker and
More roads,
and the Socratic method. That's all.
which was
To ask questions.
they had no answer, right? So what happened to him anyway? Why is he famous?
Is he the one that committed suicide with hemlock poison?
Did he like kill himself?
Is that really suicide, I wonder? Try to look. What do you think? Is that suicide?
Yeah, I would say so.
So the question was, why did he drink the hemlock? And if somebody offers you a shot of hemlock, should you try it? Where'd you go to school? Villanova. Okay. This is the Villanova Road. This is like the people who go to church and never run to the front. They come late so they can stand close to the door. You know, just because, I don't know why. I mean, do any of you ever willingly march down to the front? It's easy to predict behaviors. No! Okay. Stay in the back. I want to be near holy water. This is a fire. Which happens sometimes. I was once, I think it was around Easter. Every year at this church down the shore, they have a ceremony where they have a fire. And this one year, one priest kind of got a little carried away and got too close, and his robe started going out. And so it proved important for somebody to have, I don't know, about a half a gallon of holy water right handy to stop it. Then everything went on, but Socrates, all you know was the guy's dead. But of course, anybody from, when was he around, you know? Was he around at the time of the American Civil War? Who said yes? Oh. BC? Is it Boston College? No, Jesuit school. Yeah. That's right. Oh yeah, you guys beat Fordham. That's right. Another Jesuit school. Basketball, I think. So, yeah, it was a long time ago. He did something. Who was his student, by the way? Anybody know?
Plato?
Plato! Good. So, do you know that the only reason we know about Socrates is because he had this student Plato who wrote lots of stuff and wrote about him? Because if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't know beans about him. So, if you're not going to write books yourself, you better have a student who writes a lot of books so that then they'll know about you. Otherwise, you're just dust in the wind. Right? So, you went to Villanova too. So, how many philosophies did you take?
2?
2?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what more can you illuminate us about Socrates, Plato?
It was like sophomore year, so was that?
Pardon me? Sophomore year was a long time ago.
Long time.
Yeah, well, you know, these things, you look back later in life and you look at, what course do I really remember? What was I doing all those years? Did I really go to college? I mean, I know people who aren't sure. It's all haze. Some schools have more of that than others, but know, they wouldn't have this stuff required if it wasn't important. But maybe the problem is that nobody has a way of explaining to you why it's important. Socrates is so pivotal. Why is he so pivotal? You know? Where'd you go?
McDaniel
McDaniel, where's that?
in Maryland.
In Maryland. Down south in Maryland. Are you above or below the Mason-Dixon line? Below. So that's a southern school. And where'd you go?
Drexel.
Drexel. They don't have philosophy
They do, but I
there,
repressed it.
right? But you repressed
I
it?
repressed it. Yeah, they only make
She was a psychology major, you know, she's being very Freudian with us now. I repressed it, yes. Okay, so, but do you know anything about philosophy just by osmosis?
so much.
By you know, being in the library or reading comic books about famous, you know, classic comics about famous philosophers? No?
I remember reading it and put it on paper. So that was the end of it.
Yeah, it goes in the eyes and comes out. Okay, now what? So why is this guy important? Never ask yourself. Because in philosophy, if you took a course like I did, which was probably not a good idea in some ways. When I was an undergraduate, I had these friends who were a little older than I was, who I kind of knew from hanging out in this coffee shop on campus. And they were philosophy majors. And they encouraged me, who had had all of 2 philosophy courses at that point, yeah, like sophomore level courses, to take this course, History of Western Philosophy. It's great, you'll learn everything you need to know about all the philosophers from the beginning of time to now. And they were very persuasive. I mean, they could have sold used cars. It was very interesting what they had to say. So I did it. I signed up for it. Wow. Did I know what I was getting into? No, I didn't. What I was getting into was a 2-semester sequence that was basically like graduate work. And in case you haven't taken a real graduate course, because I know some of the graduate courses that people take are kind of Mickey Mouse. Real graduate courses require that you read several books and that you write papers that mean you have to understand stuff and have lots of citations. You have to become expert on things. Well, I never had, you know, half the courses that you're undergraduate, you write papers in, right? You take multiple guest tests. I remember this one course in the psychology of adjustment that I had to take. I used to arrive in the library at 9 o'clock in the morning to take a test at 10 o'clock. And I would speed read through the 3 chapters and make a few notes on what was in the summaries of the chapters and go in and ace every one of them. It wasn't real challenging. No papers, just quizzes. Final exam. Piece of cake. Did I learn much in that class? Nah. No. A lot of substance. It was like eating sushi. You know? Half hour later you're starved. So, what about this other course? The professor was this guy who, 2 years earlier, received his PhD from Princeton. His name was Max Hocutt. In those days, this was back when Jim Croce was a student at the same time I was. You know who Jim Croce was? Well, this is a little Villanova background, folks. There are 2 really famous graduates of Villanova that count for something. One of them is Howie Long. The other is Jim Croce. Now you probably know about Howie Long because you see him on TV all the time, right? He's the one with the cop hair. So you already know who Howie Long is. Right? Yeah. What year did he get in the Hall of Fame?
Mid-80s?
Yeah, it wasn't too long after he retired, right? Yeah, he was that good. One of our HRD graduates from the beginning of the program, the guy by the name of Bill Fleshman, who was a guard who practiced opposite Howie, has told me 100 times, and he told me once, how practicing across from Howie was really rough. He was covered with bruises every day. So Howie Long is this guy who was very famous defensive end for the Raiders, who had been a student at Villanova, met his wife at Villanova. Used to hang out outside my office waiting for her to take a break from her job in the classic languages department back in those days. And of course, when he stopped playing football, he was smart enough to learn to speak very well and stand up straight in front of the camera. And of course, he also comments on professional football as one of the well-paid guys on what networks he has. CBS or is it Fox? Fox. Okay. So it's a good life. I think he's reached a point in life where even his oldest child is playing football now. And Jim Croce, on the other hand, had a little different life story. In 1973, he died in a plane crash. Just as he had something like 4 top 10 hits going for him. He wrote a heck of a lot of really great songs. And they all got popular right in the early 70s. But he told the kids at this school down south, where he had been forced to miss the concert for them the previous year, that he'd definitely come back. When he missed the concert, he was kind of an unknown, but a year later, he was really big. But he was going to go back, and he gave the concert there. And then when the plane was taken off with his band, for some reason it didn't quite get enough elevation into the runway in one of these little towns. And it clipped some trees. That was it. Bad, Bad Leroy Brown, you ever hear that song? Time in a Bottle, I mean, the list is long. So, he was a psychology major in the mid-60s. And what's funny is if you look at his picture in the yearbook, the tie and the blazer, because all the boys, there was a boys' school back then. The only females are nursing students. I'm not even sure they started yet. And a couple of years later, the picture's on the album cover. He's got a stogie sticking out of his mouth. He's got a mustache, Fu Manchu down to here. Kind of a mop of hair, and different image. Lyrics also convey a different image. Guy from South Philadelphia. So, yeah, that's somebody from Philadelphia. There was another person who had been the victim of a plane crash a few years earlier, who was a big star that you might have heard of. He was from Texas. He was Buddy. You heard of Buddy Holly? Wow. And what'd you hear about Buddy Holly?
That he died in a plane crash.
Yeah. You know any of his songs?
Susie Q, something like that.
Susie Q was...
Who's Buddy Holly?
Well, he had one song related to what we're talking about in this course, change. A song called Every Day. And what's happening every day according to that song? You know? You don't know that much about Buddy Holly. Every day changes are going faster. Not only are there more changes, but the changes are going faster. The changes are going faster. Things are changing faster. Funny thing, he wrote that in 58. By 1970, a futurist who became very famous doing that work wrote something called Future Shock, which was about how it is that that's exactly what's happening. Everything is changing faster and faster. In fact, it's changing so fast that people are doing weird things to cope with the rate of change. One of the weird things that he wrote about at that time was that people were having, well, the radio stations were having oldies stations. You had no idea that oldie stations were going on back in the 60s even. Well, yeah, there were people who wanted to listen to the music from the 50s. Now, I mean, you find some stations that have 50s music, 60s music, you know, the whole thing. How many of you have satellite radio in your car? Only one. Shocker.
Came with it.
Came with the car.
Yeah.
Do you have XM or the other one?
I think it's serious.
Sirius. Is that the one with Howard?
I had it, it was too expensive, I got rid of it.
Well, you know, Howard Stern's going to go broke if you don't pay your dues. So even in the parks, even in the popular culture, we've got a recognition showing up. Starting in the 50s, into the 60s, the things were just changing too fast. What was happening to people as a result of all these changes? When you think about all these changes,
We're scared.
you're scared. Fear is one thing. Okay, another word.
Resistant
Resistant to what?
to changing anything?
Yeah, you don't want to change. I don't want to change anymore. Change is a lot of work. Every time they change something, it's a lot of work. New software release comes out. Oh, we had version 4.0. You had last year 3.0. The year before 2.0. Every time you got to learn stuff again, right? It's a pain in the neck. But all this unknown, what does it do to you? Make you feel good? You already said no. One word I'm looking for. Fishing for the word. Panic. Panic. Panic?
Stress?
No, she's over here. I'm sorry. You knew it was coming. Yeah, you've had a few years to rehearse. I heard the other word I was looking for.
Stress.
Stress! What does that mean? Stress. What is it? Everybody uses the word. Come on. Anybody been shot at in this room?
Anxiety.
You know, it's a kind of a milder word. I mean, it's
Severe discomfort.
just mere discomfort.
Severe, yeah.
Well, the stress hits different levels. I mean, I wouldn't suggest to you that stress is all bad. I mean, if you aspire to a situation where you're going to have zero stress, you may as well just enter a coma and stay there. Stress is not bad. Because stress is related to arousal. I mean, if you don't have any arousal, you're just going to fall asleep. Okay? So you go to a rocking chair and you can doze off. Stress really, though, refers to what happens when we got too much. Oh, these nice pieces of chalk. You don't look like aspirin tablets. One of these curves, what's the psychology majors here? Let's see. 1, 2, are you raising your hand? That's pretty subtle. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, what was your major?
I have 2 bachelors. The first one was commercial art with a psych minor, and then fashion design for the second.
So you kind of danced around psychology. You were psychologically artistic.
Sure.
And you?
Sociology?
Sociology.
Music performance.
Music performance. Are you a singer or you play or
Percussion, play.
percussion? You're a drummer?
Not in the sense of rock band, but yes.
You mean you stand there and you wait for the right count to go boom? That's critical. You hit it at the wrong time and everybody's gonna know.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a minute, that was off. It's like somebody who is flat or inappropriately sharp. So, there's a psychological law for all of you in psychology. It has to do with the relationship between performance and arousal. Let's see, how many of you had to take physiological psychology? Let's see. You didn't do chocolate. So some of you dodged that one because, of course, that's one of those scary courses. It's worse than statistics. Because you have to learn about. So, did you have to do surgery on animals?
Brain.
Whose brain did you use?
A sheep.
A sheep? They'll let you do anything, this damn sheep. Here's my brain thing. So you learn where different things happen in a sheep's brain, localization of function. Okay. Did you learn about the central nervous system? What's the central nervous? How about the out-of-town nervous system? I mean, what else did you learn about in there? Did you learn about the autonomic nervous system? What do you know about that?
There's a stress, and that's what we're getting at. That, like, it responds to situations, like stressful situations, your autonomic nervous system. Cause you release excess levels of cortisol in your brain, and that makes you feel more stressed. And there are certain levels of cortisol in your brain that'll actually make you have peak performance. If it's too much cortisol, then you won't.
So let's say that if this is performance, this could be peak performance, right? But over here, this is off peak. I mean, you're not doing too good. Now, have you ever tried to perform anything? I don't know. Anybody do anything athletic here? Tennis balls? Yeah? What did she say? You wish? Anything else? So what happens when you're trying to perform and you're half asleep?
Do through.
Why?
The brain's not working.
Well, it's more than your brain. It's all the connections from the brain through the central autonomic nervous system. It all has to be working well to allow you to perform. Things like reaction time. You know, we give you a stimulus and we see how long it takes you to respond. How many of you took driver's education? Anybody having an accident when they were taking driver's education? No? Sometimes happens because people get distracted. Do they use a little device where they have you sit in a chair and they test you and have a light come on and see how fast you can put your foot on the brake? To get your simple reaction time? Gee, they used to do that back in the horse and buggy days. Of course, they stopped doing that. Very practical because it shows you that you've got to pay attention, or if you're not, you might run into somebody's rear end in front of you. You're responsible because you're not supposed to do that. Does the same thing happen if you're already jacked up with 5 gallons of coffee? And If in other words, if your arousal's too high, you make mistakes. Maybe you'll slam on the brakes at the wrong time too hard, and somebody behind you is going to run into you. So we have both of these kinds of things. In other words, when your arousal's too high, over here, too high, your performance is off. When it's too low, it's off. The curves are different depending on what you're doing. If you're trying to repair a watch, something delicate like that, the curve moves. It moves down. So that the point where your optimal performance is at lower levels of arousal. On the other hand, if you're doing something that's forceful, it requires you to use every bit of energy and strength you've got, then the curve moves up. I mean, anybody ever watched the pregame activities of the New Orleans Saints? Anybody know the name of the quarterback? Drew. What first name basis? No, Mr. Breeze. Yeah, they get out there and he's leading them in the chant, which may or may not help. What are they playing next week? The Bad Boys from Dallas? Well, you can guess who I'm rooting for. Mr. Breeze. Mr. Bush and others in that game. Hell of the Cowboys. And on the other hand, I can also say, the hell with that man Reed, because he's what's wrong with the Eagles. Just my editorial opinion. And I'm sure that half of you could care less about, who cares about the Eagles, right? Or as my father-in-law likes to call them, the pigeons. So over here, your performance is off because your arousal is too high. Here it's off because it's too low. So what happens? You go drink 2 gallons of coffee, you get yourself up, and you miss. You took too much coffee, and now you're over here. Your performance is still low. So we're always concerned about getting our performance adjusted so we can perform well. So stress is not all bad. But one of the big things that we worry about with too much change, too much uncertainty, is that we sometimes feel like we need an tranquilizer. Yeah? So people take pills. Prescription pills, often. Who was the entertainer? Didn't somebody just die recently with overdose of prescription pills? Some actor or actress or something?
Keith Blanchard did, but that was a couple years ago.
Oh yeah, right. So, it's not all, heroin on the streets and stuff like that. Let's go and see problems. And a lot of this stuff is tied to your work. Especially what's going on with the uncertainties of rock stars and people like that. That's their work. So we got a lot of problems with change. It has ramifications. And who was this professor at Harvard I was talking about a few minutes ago? Cantor. First name? Middle name? Right, good. See, it's good to know somebody basic that. Yeah, Elizabeth Moss Cantor. So, she was the first person who wrote a book about management, dealing with these corporate culture issues. And she wrote about this stuff like that. Yes, Virginia, change is a lot of work. Yes, Virginia is a Santa Claus. Yeah, change is a lot of work. Every time they make changes at your work, you got to do extra work. You got to put in extra hours. Every time they move your office, you got to pack it all up. So all these changes are really annoying. Sometimes they're so annoying you just as soon quit. Well, in today's economy, people aren't quitting a lot. But you just wait. As soon as the economy improves, people are going to be leaving places that annoy them and frustrate them so fast, it'll make your head spin. It's just they're waiting. There's been this accumulation of resentments. People who are bad bosses, thought they could get away with being mean to people. But assuming the economy ever does straighten out, there's going to be big repercussions, and some companies are going to suffer from the lack of wisdom of their ways. So, yeah. And by the way, a lot of this, too, is that people, when changes occur, do you like surprises? You don't like surprises. How about surprise parties? Yeah. Just like cake. Let's just check this out. Do you like surprise parties?
Not really.
You ever have one? Yeah. Not fun. What did it feel like?
I don't know, I guess.
Let's say that nobody knows it but you, because today's your birthday, and suddenly there's this ruckus going on, and the singing telegram comes in. Some guy comes in. What do they call it? The guys that are well built and come in.
Chippendales?
Chippendales. Yeah. Some embarrassing carrying on like that somebody thought would entertain you, and it's really embarrassing. Surprise? Yeah, right. You can think that's a surprise. So that's not fun, right? And in fact, a lot of surprises aren't fun. And basically, a lot of us don't. I used to enjoy giving people surprise parties. And then I was given one. My own personal experience with that was that everything was out of control. Totally out of control. And as each new person showed up, and these were people I had seen within the last week, and they totally fooled me. And I was so good at putting these on, I figured nobody could fool me. It was just really bothering. You ever hear something like that? Yeah. Not my idea of fun. After that, I never gave anybody another surprise party. It was like, I'm tired from this. So, in a lot of ways, we don't like surprises because they make us feel out of control. And we need that sense of control. We keep a kind of equilibrium in life. So, if today you're working here, and then without warning, tomorrow you're going to be sent to Dallas. Oh, why am I digging in Dallas? Anyway, but I mean, Texas is hot. They have tornadoes and snakes and all kinds of things. So, what are some other surprises you would like to have at work?
Getting fired.
Yeah. Where am I going to live?
It usually doesn't come with your knowledge.
Yeah. What else? They might relocate you. Could they give you some creepy job? You could be working there, but now you got to. Is there anybody at work that you would prefer not to report to? Oh my God. What else bad could happen?
Pay cuts.
Pay cuts? Did I do that like playoffs? Poor Jim, he'll go on into eternity doing this stupid blow up on playoffs. Yeah, I mean, it just, your life starts to fall apart and crumble in front of you with this kind of stuff. So, change is tough. And we've already talked about, hey, most of these changes are planned by somebody, not you though. Because if you planned them, everything would be fine, right? And they didn't ask you either, right? Somebody somewhere decided to do something stupid, and you're being victimized by it. Isn't that the way it happens? So, what do you do? Well, you can do things, but we're going to talk about it. What you can do. So let's look at some other things that happen, like big changes in companies. You know what's really weird about this stuff? It happened all at once. It's like nobody was studying change. There were a few books that were under the radar in the 50s and 60s. And then along in 1980, NBC, the network, they're having their own problems, right? What's their big problem these days? Yeah, it's like, oh, they had this great idea. I mean, I can't believe no heads have rolled yet, those overpaid executives. I always wonder about this. Wait a minute. We watch TV to see what? Executives or talent? What do you turn the TV on for? Yeah, you want to see talent. Who gets paid more? You know who Michael Eisner is? He ran Disney for a number of years. Do you know what he got paid at Disney? $90 million plus a year for over a decade for making decisions about which movie they should make and stuff like that. So finally, the nephew of Walt Disney started raising hell about it in the corporate meetings, and they finally got him out of there. Oh, by the way, the two guys that reported to him made $80 million each. So they were doing stuff where they moved the chess pieces around, but they couldn't sing, they couldn't dance, they couldn't draw cartoons. So we got a lot of that in the people who manage the talent. And it's the talent, whether it's athletes or singers or actors, unless some of that talent scout. There is one example. What's that guy? And I never watched the show, but some of you, I'm sure, must watch it. The ratings wouldn't be where they are. American. Yeah. I thought we weren't supposed to have idols. What's his name? Simon Cowell. Yeah. Simon Obnoxious. And that persona he projects gets him ratings, right? But our state is going to abandon that because he's got some other gig. So anyway, in 1980, NBC puts on this documentary for 2 hours called A White Paper, If Japan Can, Why Can't We? And this documentary was mostly about a guy who was past retirement age at the time. Anybody know his name? His last name was Deming. He studied physics at Yale after finishing a bachelor's degree at the University of Wyoming and a master's at the Colorado School of Mines. But he didn't do physics. He became a statistician. And during the Depression, he was the number 2 guy in the Bureau of Census, figuring out how to do statistical sampling of the population, because you really can't go out and count everybody in America, even though certain congressmen think that's the way it should work. You can't do it. It's impossible. It's too big. You need to take samples and do accurate estimates. So he figured all that stuff out. Then when World War II came along, and we had to make all this military stuff, rifles, jeeps, trucks. You know what the consequence was if your rifle jammed, if your jeep broke down, if your truck broke down, if your tank broke down? You're dead. That's right. If you're sitting here behind a fallen tree and you've got a gun, and as long as you can keep going bang, 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 you'll stay alive. And the minute it jams and it doesn't go bang, bang, bang anymore, you can only hit one person. And the next thing you know, they're sticking a bayonet into you. So the quality, the reliability of your equipment is pretty critical. So this is where Deming became very famous, because he figured out all the statistical formulas for making quality stuff that didn't break. Because in the beginning of World War II, there was a lot of problems. Because they were converting plants that made sewing machines into plants that made rifles fast. After Pearl Harbor. In the first months of productivity were junk. So at the end of the war, after the Japanese were defeated and had 2 cities blown up, the occupation force told the JUSE, the Japanese Union of Scientists and Engineers, that we would help them rebuild, and they could have any American experts they'd like to come over to educate them and tell them how they could get out of the mess they're in. It wasn't that nice. So the person they wanted to have come to Japan was Deming, because they'd read his papers about doing statistical sampling and how you could really radically improve quality. So he was asked by General MacArthur to go over there, and he did. And he spent a long time over there, and he loved it. He really loved the Japanese, and they loved him. And you could tell this because in 1950, they created this huge medallion with his profile on it, called the Deming Prize, to give the company that had made the most progress in improving quality. Now I'm just bringing this up as an example of, hey, this was real change. You take a country that's been smote a nearly fatal blow, demolished, and you try to bring them up from the ashes like the phoenix. That's a big change. But these people willingly tried to do everything he suggested they do. And they believed that if they did, as he had promised, he says, if you do everything I say, your economy will find new greatness in 20 years. So what happened? When did people first start buying lots of Honda Accords? About 20 years after that. So, thus, in 1980, we got this NBC thing. If Japan can, why can't we? And they're all following Deming around, and they're interviewing him and interviewing other people at GM and Ford and so forth. And they say, you know, okay, if Japan listened to this guy and they turned themselves around, why are we sitting here with economic problems? Why don't we do what they did? Well, there was lots of... By the way, we have this white paper in the library. If you'd like to look at it, you can do that. It's a historically interesting document. Because you know what? We really haven't moved that far from where we were. One of the problems with plan change, it doesn't always work. Gee, what did Emily say earlier? People, blank, change. Resist it, yeah. Resist it. You can tell people how they can be healthier, slimmer, trimmer, richer. Probably won't do it, will they? Look at all the people that could never quit smoking until they were diagnosed with cancer. So when they got 6 months to go, they quit smoking. So 1980 comes and goes, and then all of a sudden, all these books are coming out about how to manage change. A guy by the name of Tom Peters, who I love to watch give talks, Tom's a very bright guy. But the funniest presentation I ever saw at a professional meeting, I saw Tom give in Baltimore 12 years ago. Now, Tom is about my size, except he's a little chunkier. In fact, that day, don't ever do this as a representative of Philadelphia, but he was such a superstar, he could get away with anything. He shows up at this professional conference with 10,000 people in attendance to be the keynote speaker, and he's wearing shorts and a t-shirt. Now, I suppose that if he were ripped, it might have been okay, but Tom's beyond ripped. Tom's got drumsticks, you know? I mean, and it's not because he's doing squats with 350 pounds, because he's eating too many drumsticks, probably. But he told me about probably around 91 that his consulting fee per day was $35,000. And he was getting advances for books. There were several $1 million. His first book, In Search of Excellence, which he wrote with Kevin Waterman, was a huge seller. This was a management classic. These two guys who were engineering graduates from Cornell, one of the top 5 engineering schools, Penn State, MIT, and a couple others, Purdue. And then he got a PhD from Stanford. Now, hopefully you realize that Stanford is one of the top schools in the United States. So these guys were consulting for one of the big 6 firms. And when they got this gig, they were going out interviewing all the people in these top companies who were regarded as the most excellent companies in the United States. They published this book which looked at what were their truly excellent companies. It was a hit. Everybody wanted to read it because they wanted to emulate what these companies were doing. This got him going on this high-priced speaking and consulting business. Oh, what's he doing these days? He has a farm in New England. He owns a company that makes training videos and films. His revenues from publishing books and writing scripts and movies and stuff like that are probably $20 million a year. I mean, he doesn't make as much money as Jimmy Buffett, but he doesn't have to pay for 2 airplanes either. So, Tom Peters is a management guru superstar. Has been for a long time. But he's kicked this off in right around 1980, when he was pretty young still. Who else came out of the woodwork at that time? Well, we've got some interesting people. 2 guys, Deal and Kennedy, wrote the first book on corporate culture. Up to that point, nobody much talked about corporate culture. But suddenly people read this book, and one of my revelations from reading that book was, all of a sudden I understood why I hated working in a couple places I worked. I said, oh, now I know what it's like being there. A guy named Peter Senge, who is a professor at MIT, wrote a book called The Fifth Discipline in 1990. Japan and Youth Quality Service. So the thought was, hey, if we do things like they do in Japan, we'll get the same results. Well, after a while, people realized that, wait a minute, we can't do everything like in Japan because we have a different culture. Much more heterogeneity here. Much more homogeneity in Japan. But there was an interesting author who was working on another PhD from Stanford. He was of Japanese ancestry, but he'd never been to Japan. He didn't speak the language. But he decided, gee, maybe I'll get in touch with my origins and do a dissertation about Japanese management. This turned out to be a book called Theory Z. You've heard of Theory X and Theory Y, right? Right? Thank you for nodding. just for the best of it. If I were a Theory X manager, according to McGregor, what would I be inclined to behave like toward members of the class? What assumptions would I make about your behavior in class? If, let's say, you weren't as responsive as I thought you should be. If I were a Theory X person. You should check out. Didn't some of you have? Yeah, some of you did have organizational psychology. Yes, that's how it is. Well, go check that out on your Google. Theory X, Theory Y. McGregor, who is a sociologist, he cooked that up. So then you got Theory Z, which is something related to those. And it's a book about Japanese management. So then you got Alvin Toffler, who wrote that book, Future Shock, I referred to. He ends up writing several more. They're talking about the wave of progress associated with changes having to do with information. You know, we become the information society. People don't make stuff anymore. They just figure out how to get you more information faster and faster until you're going nuts by overload. Well, we finally reached the point where Daniel Pink wrote a book a couple of years ago, in 2005, entitled A Whole New Mind, which is what you need after all of that. Brain transplant. And this takes us back to the beginning. Back before Socrates. Pre-Socratic. In the history of philosophy, Socrates is this dividing line. And there are a group of Greek philosophers who are called pre-Socratic philosophers. They were around before Socrates. And one of them is the guy who started the study of change. His name was Heraclitus. Today, if you studied in those plain philosophy courses, remember Heraclitus? Well, I'm going to send you a thing in an email, which is some information and quotes from Heraclitus. It's amazing that we still have quotes from people that long ago. But apparently, he would take his students in their little white robes and take them down to the park by the Schuylkill. And he would he would have them sit there and think about things like, walk over to the Schuylkill. Now, if you step into the river, and you take your foot back out again, if you step into it again, will you be stepping into the same river? So how many of the rest of you say, no, it's a different river? How many of you say it's the same river? How many of you don't say nothing? You can raise your hand to show me you're not saying anything. No, we're just going to mute people. When Eric Klein said this is really a complicated issue. Because it's an issue that looks at the interdependence of your actions and your environment. I mean, you're right. I mean, define change, define river. Look, anybody here from Texas? You ever heard of the Rio Grande? Where's that river?
I don't know. I heard of it though.
Where'd you?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know where it is.
It's the border.
Texas. Border between Texas
Probably take after that.
and Mexico and in certain parts of New Mexico. But during the spring, there's lots of water going through there. You know, you can do rafting. But by August, it's a series of puddles. And a good place to go fishing. Probably just find a few rattlesnakes. Is it still the Rio Grande in the middle of August? Is it still a river? What defines a river? See, it's... But on the other hand, when you step into that river, I'm not sure some of you laugh at the idea of stepping into the Schuylkill. When you step into that river, you're doing things to the river, right? You are changing the river. You're stirring up some mud. God knows what else. Your stinky feet get in there. Don't want people drink that stuff. But also, the water's cold. It might have bacteria that could afflict you. So there's interaction. You change it, it changes you. And that was really Heraclitus' point. It's not simple. It's not that, I mean, you could say that, sure, obviously. The water that's going by when I step in the first time, when I step in the second time, is 20 feet downstream. So I'm stepping into different water. It's the same river, because what is a river? A river is a channel that has water in it. Maybe, maybe not. Channel. It makes it the Schuylkill. I mean, if the thing dries up and there's no water, it's still the Schuylkill, right? Heraclitus was very interesting because he's way back then, earlier than 500 BC, he was figuring out the complexity of change and the complexity of interaction and influence. It's complicated. One of the best books to come out about change came out in 1972. It also shows us, and some of you psychology majors should be aware of this. Did any of you ever want to be therapists? No, we're going to do that. We're nuts. Are you nuts? So you didn't want to work with people with problems, huh? You don't care about people, do you? So it's not that you once thought this is what you want to do, but you're wised up. It's just that you never really wanted to do that. That's okay. I played around with it for a while, and I was like, oh my God, how frustrating. You really can't fix these people. It's like cars that are broken. You can't buy parts anymore. So what do you do? Well, it still is the area in which change was first studied and most studied. So how do we take people who really want to change? You know, people have problems. They want to change. They want to lose weight. They want to stop drinking. They want to stop smoking. People want to change, right? We said New Year's. What do people do for New Year's? What a silly waste of time it is, but how many of you resolutionaries have New Year's resolutions that you're BSing yourself about, huh? I saw those expressions. That was really cute. Yeah. That's all. Do you have goals written down that you're going to accomplish in this new year? Yeah?
I mean, yeah, there's things I'd like to accomplish this year.
You have them written down?
I mean, I know what they are.
Tell anybody?
We'll graduate, get a job, pass the PHR. That's my...
If you tell other people, it's more likely you'll do them. You know why? Because your friends will put pressure on you. They'll remind you, they'll bug you. If you don't tell anybody, if you keep it a secret, you know what's going to happen. You're really not serious about it because you don't want any more pressure, and you're not going to pressure yourself. Most of those resolutions are hot air, and nobody's going to do much about them. I mean, last year, how many of you had a resolution? Nobody. You're smart. But see, what is a New Year's resolution? It's a half-baked change plan. But if it were fully designed, if you had a recipe, if you had a plan, probably would work. Plans have to be written down. Didn't work. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is different ways of planning and doing things that make sure that change happens. You get the results you're after. And you know, a lot of what HR leaders are supposed to do is to design change and make sure it happens. But of course, a lot of it doesn't happen, and that's when they get rid of it. Didn't do what you're supposed to do. But change is not easy. Change is very difficult. So, we're going to go through figuring out what we can do here. Well, there must have not been enough syllabi because nothing came back to me. Oh, there's something.
There weren't enough of your article.
Okay, well, I'll get you some of those. Who didn't get the article? 4 people. Well, let's quickly go through the stuff you need to do to... Did you buy books yet?
There was one that didn't have anymore, and there's another one that we still can't buy apparently in the bookstore right now.
Which one's that?
Which one is it? The strength, the quality strength?
You can probably get that at Barnes & Noble.
Just so you're aware.
Cheaper.
And the chains, the critical chain is in there, so,
Critical Chain is out?
yeah.
You can find that anywhere online.
Yeah, I got Walmart.
Yeah, you buy books where you want to buy them, but there are better prices some places. Okay, the Mary Walton book should still be around in lots of places. There's a whoops here. This is no longer French and Bell. It should be Cummings and Worley. And there is a new version of the syllabus coming out within a day or two. We're putting into a new template to get it organized differently. So the critical chain is not in the store, but you can get it from various places. Barnes & Noble's pretty easy. Cameron and Quinn book from Madison Wesley is readily available. The Strength Finders thing is pretty easy to get a hold of. What I want you to get busy on is reading the first chapter of the Cummings and Worley book. That's the main text. And to, as soon as you get the Gold Rat book, that's a paperback novel, fiction. So just get zooming on it. And get the Strengths Finder so you can figure out what your strengths are. Because basically what it does, the book gives you, don't buy a used book either. For that one, don't buy a used book because somebody will have taken and used the code inside of it. The code allows you to go to the website for the book and to access the Strengths Finder 2.0 instrument. This is a self-report test you take online, and it gives you your top 5 strengths. Why is that important? Well, which do you think is going to get you further? To understand what your top 5 strengths are and use those to make accomplishments, or to try to get through on something that you're really not good at? For example, how many of you can't sing worth a lick? Do you think you ought to go try for American Idol? I suspect if you've ever watched some of those programs, you can see they're not too kind to people who had the misjudgment to try out when they have no talent. So where is your talent? Where are your strengths? What are you good at? It's important to know. It's important to put your investment in those things which you already have a head start at. If you're a fast runner, and when you try to swim, you sink to the bottom, what do you think you should try? Track or swimming? Thank you. But, every year they have this Iron Man thing. Every year somebody sinks and drowns because they should have stuck to running or bikes or something. Figure out what they are. This book will do it. So the book is good because what it does is once you get your report, you print it out, then you sit down with the book, and you go back and forth between the report and the book. It helps you figure out how you can have a strategy to get further with the abilities and strengths you already have. So that's all it's about. But this is a very effective way to mentor and develop the people that you manage. It's not just about you. It's also about you being a leader, you being a manager. Because if you're going to be effective, you have to work with the strengths of the people who work for you. Okay? So, in the 2 emails that I referenced earlier, you've already seen what the 2 of 3 assignments are. You have the first shorter paper. That's coming up real quick, so get busy on it. Get it in. And also, I suggest that take your paper to somebody in the reading center a week early so you can get some guidance on how you can improve it. And don't start thinking, well, I always got this or that grade, it must be okay. Anybody can improve. And the two most important predictors of your career success are, according to 3 longitudinal studies done with employees of AT&T from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 2 things. Anybody know what they are? Spoken communication and written communication. People who are good writers, people who are good speakers, are the people who do the best in their careers. So, work on those things. Being a great communicator is really helpful. So that first assignment, what's your recollection of what I said you should do in that first paper? Do you remember that at all?
Compare and contrast the change in organizational development. That's all I really remember.
The trumpet is drowning you out. I think that's a trumpet.
Yeah. Comparing and contrasting the changes in OD. That's all I can remember.
Well, you got 3 things. You got training versus OD versus change management. Change management and OD are quite similar, but they're not exactly the same. But training also involves changing things, right? I mean, if we train you, we're going to teach you some stuff. So at the end, hopefully you're different. But training and OD aren't the same. They kind of overlap, but they're not the same. So I want you to think hard about what the overlap looks like. Okay? And then paper number 2. It's longer. What else besides being longer?
You get to choose the topic.
Hmm?
You get to choose the topic.
Yeah, the reason I'm giving you a list is just to help some of you who might be overwhelmed by figuring out, oh my God, what are the possibilities here? So I figure, okay, we're going to give you at least 20 hot topics that you can choose if you don't have something you're already burning with desire for. Okay? And then we end up with a take-home exam, which deal with some of the central issues that we go over in the course. That's it.
Dr. Bush, what do you mean by presentations based on the papers?
I think that's a remnant of an old version of the syllabus.
Okay.
Because, you know, that's why we changed to a new template, because you use last year's version and you update the dates and all this stuff, and sometimes some sentence or so that didn't belong there gets left in. So this is a very temporary version that will be replaced. You will probably get an email attachment for the next class, which will have new stuff, and it'll be prettier. It's different boxes and all kinds of stuff. It's the same basic thing that some of you have already seen that we used in metrics. So, and most of you know what plagiarism is and why not to do it, and all that good stuff. But we have to discuss it every year because there's always somebody who either forgot or was missing that day. Like, what happens to people who cite stuff from Wikipedia? Pardon me? No, we do more interesting things, like we hang them upside down out the window or something like that. But no, I understand that now that you can executed in high school if you use Wikipedia, but don't do it. And in fact, I would prefer you didn't cite any web stuff at all. Look at serious peer-reviewed journal articles, what we call primary information sources. Stuff that people are creating knowledge, not the people who are, like, never use an encyclopedia. And Wikipedia is like a poor, that's an encyclopedia written by people that you have no idea who they were. They could be drug dealers off the street. You don't know. So, there you go. Change. It's tough stuff. And what kind of change happened when the economy went south over a year ago?
People lost their jobs.
True. Of the two types we talked about, was that planned or unplanned?
Unplanned?
Unplanned, that's right. So there's a lot of that going around. Yet we have to have contingency plans, right? We have to have disaster planning, because we've had too many examples of disasters where they can happen. It's just like, I hope you're not driving on bald tires, are you? Okay. Thank you. Good to see you. So if you have any questions, just send an email.